Hello everyone, this is Highlander from MTG Cardsmith doing another custom Magic the Gathering card review, and today we're reviewing another card by VULTURE! And today we've got a card called Faerie Fire. This is a 1-mana tribal enchantment fairy. Whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy you control, copy that spell or ability for up to one other target fairy you control the spell or ability could target. The copy targets that fairy. Okay. Let me reread that. Whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy you control, copy that spell or ability for up to one other target fairy you control the spell or ability could target. Yikes. The copy targets that fairy. Okay, I see what you're trying to do here. The wording here is a lot. It's pretty confusing. So let me try now. This is a good example of a card that's a little bit too complex for its own good. So, I mean, I think the idea behind this card is fine, but I think here's how I would probably word a card like this. I would say, whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy you control, copy that spell or ability. If you control another fairy, is that what we want? I don't know. I think copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. Okay, so this is definitely different than what you're doing, right? You're saying whenever you cast a spell or ability on a fairy you control, then you get that same effect on another fairy you control, right? But the wording here is just so awkward that okay, let me I haven't quite hit what you're trying to do. So let me see if I can kind of find a wording that sort of does a similar thing here. So whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy creature you control, copy that spell or ability. As long as you... Okay, hold on. So whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy creature you control, if you control another fairy creature, copy that spell or ability. Copy that spell or ability. I wonder if you could just say, like, targeting another fairy creature you control. That's kind of a lot. Whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy creature you control, if you control another fairy creature, copy that spell or ability targeting another fairy creature you control. Or how about if you control another fairy creature, copy that spell or ability targeting another fairy creature you control. Something like that. It's still a little awkward. Whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy creature you control, if you control another fairy creature, copy that spell or ability targeting another fairy creature you control. It's still a little awkward here, but I think it's at least a little bit better than this. I would probably just simplify this and maybe go this route. Whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy you control, if you control another fairy... Now, I'm going to throw creatures on here because you've made your enchantment a fairy, so... whenever a spell or ability you control targets a fairy creature you control, if you control another fairy creature, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. I think this is maybe the way that I would go if this were my card. I know it doesn't exactly do what you're trying to do here, but I think what you're trying to do here, maybe there. Okay, so for those viewers watching, if you can find a good wording for that, put it in the comments, and we can help VULTURE out. Just here off the top of my head, in a few minutes, I can't think of one. I'd have to kind of stew on this one for a while. But if there was not a simpler wording, I would probably just go this route and change the card a little bit to be just simpler. Especially since this is a common, you don't want your commons to be complex. You want to save that for your uncommons and your rares. Now, how good is this card? I think it's fine. I mean, yeah. I mean, this isn't like particularly great, which is fine for a 1-mana card, I think. I mean, what kind of, I mean, like best case scenario, you like target one of your fairies with like a twisted image, or some kind of a spell that draws a card as part of the effect, and then you sort of draw multiple cards. I mean, it's not particular. Like, yeah, you can like cast a combat trick or something on one of your fairies, and the other one gets it. But that's not like amazing. Really, what you want with this card is cards that like draw cards in addition to their effects. It does work on abilities as well. Who knows what kind of other abilities there are that you could copy with this, but to me it seems somewhat narrow, and so I think from a power level standpoint, I don't particularly find this card to be over or under costed or anything like that. I would probably make this card an uncommon, even though it's not like particularly strong power level wise. In like a limited environment, you don't want like a bunch of these flying around, really. Like, it's just for the complexity and for the effect, it seems like something that you just don't want like a bunch of in your limited format. So I would probably make it more of an uncommon. And if you did that, you might even potentially buff it up a little bit, like by, I don't know, making it a creature, potentially. Like you could make it a fairy itself. I mean, the fact that it's enchantment does obviously protect it from a lot, but it also reduces a lot of the card's value, because it means that if you don't have 2 fairy creatures in play, or you don't have a way to target any of your fairies, this card doesn't do anything, which is really bad. So this one to me, because the effect is like fairly, it's like the effect is like either very underwhelming or like absurd if you like kind of doing it in the right deck where you're drawing a lot of cards off this. And so like there's not really much of a middle ground. At least it feels like that to me with like where this ends up being sort of like a useful card that's also, like good, but not like kind of absurd. So I would probably, if this were my card, I would probably go the route of simplifying the text, making it uncommon, and just making it a creature itself. And that way, like, it already helps you with the conditioning on this card, or the conditions that you have to meet on this card, meaning you already control a fairy, and so you only need one other fairy now, and also a way to target one of your creatures. But because it's a creature, you're still getting value out of it, even if you don't meet those conditions, right? And on the flip side, your opponent has an easier time dealing with it if you happen to be doing absurd things. So I think this would work pretty well on a creature. So what do I give this? I think I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. I think the idea is fine. I think that this belongs in the uncommon category. I think that the current wording is too complex. And again, I think this would work better on a creature. So yeah, 6 out of 10 for this one, but not bad. Not bad. So yeah, that's my review of Faerie Fire. Thank you guys for watching.